When humanity revealed their hidden arsenal, Ambassador, Zexathala's crystalline form trembled as she floated across the observation deck of Research Station Omega. Her species, the Veltari, were known throughout the Cosmic Federation for their calm wisdom, but today fear coursed through her translucent body like liquid fire. Behind her, the swirling colors of the Nexus Nebula painted the viewport in shades of deep purple and gold, but she found no beauty in the cosmic display. General Marcus Rivera stood at the far end of the deck, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he studied the star charts floating in holographic display before him. The human was older than most of his kind who ventured into deep space, his gray hair and lined face speaking of decades spent among the stars. Yet there was something unsettling about his composure. While every other species in the Federation scrambled in panic, this human remained as still as carved stone. General Rivera, Zexathala's voice carried the harmonic undertones of her people, creating a sound like crystal bells in the station's recycled air. The Void Hunters have consumed the Altarian system. That makes 15 star systems in 2 months. Our combined fleets cannot even slow their advance. Rivera nodded without turning from his displays. The holographic images showed the steady march of destruction across the galaxy's outer rim. Each red marker represented a dead system. Billions of lives snuffed out by the ancient machine race that had emerged from the galactic core. The Void Hunters moved like a plague of metal locusts, stripping matter and energy from everything in their path. The Federation Council grows desperate, Zexathala continued, her form flickering with agitation. Some members speak of evacuation protocols, of abandoning entire sectors to save what we can, but humanity has been silent in our debates. Your representatives attend our emergency sessions but offer no solutions, no aid. We need every ship, every weapon, every tactical advantage we can gather. Finally, Rivera turned to face her. His blue eyes held a depth that made the ancient Veltari ambassador uncomfortable. Humans were young in galactic terms, barely 3 centuries since first contact, yet this one carried himself with the confidence of species that had weathered millennia of warfare. "Tell me, Ambassador," Rivera said, his voice carrying the slight accent of Earth's northern continents. "What do you know about human industrial capacity?" The question seemed strange given the circumstances. Zexathala's internal light patterns shifted to confusion. "Your people are known for rapid manufacturing and resource processing. It's one of the reasons the Federation accepted humanity so quickly, but I fail to see how industrial statistics will help us against." 22 years ago, Rivera interrupted gently, when humanity first learned of the Void Hunter threat from recovered ancient data, we began the Prometheus Protocol. He gestured to his holographic controls and the star charts disappeared, replaced by technical schematics that made Zexathala's crystalline matrix buzz with incomprehension. The design showed what appeared to be a starship, but the scale indicators had to be wrong. According to the data streams, the vessel stretched nearly 200 kilometers from bow to stern. "Impossible," Zexathala whispered. "No species has ever built ships of this magnitude. The resource requirements alone would bankrupt entire star systems." Rivera smiled for the first time since she had arrived. "You're thinking like civilized beings, Ambassador. You consider cost-benefit analyses, environmental impact, diplomatic implications. We simply asked ourselves one question. What would it take to kill something that devours stars?" The schematics rotated, revealing the internal structure of the massive vessel. Where other ships carried crew quarters and recreational facilities, this monster was packed with weapon systems. Rail cannons that stretched for dozens of kilometers, antimatter torpedo bays that could house smaller frigates, shield generators, powered by 3 separate fusion cores, each one larger than most space stations. "We call them dreadnoughts," Rivera continued. "Each one carries enough firepower to sterilize an entire planet, but that was never their true purpose. They were built to fight enemies that think in terms of solar systems rather than individual worlds." Zexathala processed this information with growing amazement and horror. Even if such construction were possible, the Federation would have detected it. Our deep space monitoring networks track every major industrial project in civilized space. Civilized. Space, yes. Rivera's smile widened. But humanity has always been comfortable operating in the dark between the stars. We built our shipyards in the shadow zones of dying stars, used automated mining platforms in sectors marked as barren, and established construction facilities in the vast emptiness between galactic arms. The ambassador's form flickered rapidly, betraying her agitation. The resources, the energy requirements. How many of these vessels could you possibly have constructed in secret? Instead of answering, Rivera activated his communicator. Control, this is Rivera. Execute Phase 1 of Dawn Protocol. The response came immediately from the station's bridge. Copy that, General. Phase 1 authorized. Beginning revelation sequence. Through the massive viewport, space itself seemed to shiver. The nebula's colors shifted and swirled as massive gravity fields disrupted the cosmic dust clouds. Then, emerging from hyperspace like a mountain of metal and fire, came humanity's answer to the Void Hunter threat. The UNS Terra's Wrath materialized in normal space with the ponderous grace of a moving continent. Its hull, dark as the space between stars, stretched beyond the limits of the viewport. Weapon arrays dotted its surface like cities on a metal world. Engine clusters at its stern glowed with contained stellar fire, each one capable of pushing the massive vessel at significant fractions of light speed. Zexathala's crystalline form went completely transparent with shock. In all her centuries of life, in all her travels across galactic civilization, she had never imagined that any species would build something so magnificently, terrifyingly excessive. 1, Rivera said quietly. That's the Terra's Wrath flagship of the Prometheus fleet. She took 8 years to complete and required the industrial output of 3 solar systems working in perfect coordination. More distortions appeared in space around them. The familiar blue-white flashes of hyperspace. Emergence began lighting up the darkness like fireworks. One by one, more dreadnoughts dropped into normal space, taking positions around Research Station Omega, in a formation that spoke of long practice and careful planning. The Federation always wondered why humanity maintained so many mining operations. In dead systems, Rivera continued as ship after ship appeared, why we insisted on establishing research stations in the deepest regions of space, why our merchant fleet grew so rapidly, while our military seemed to remain modest by galactic standards. 20 ships. 30. Each one a mobile fortress that dwarfed anything in the combined Federation fleets. Zexthala watched in stunned silence as humanity's secret navy assembled around them, blotting out entire star fields with their bulk. Every civilian transport carried construction materials, Rivera explained. Every mining platform was actually a component fabrication facility. Every research station was a coordination hub for the largest construction project in Galactic. History. 40 ships. 50. The space around Research Station Omega filled with the dark silhouettes of human engineering at its most ambitious. Each vessel bore the scars of hurried construction and brutal functionality over aesthetic design. They were not beautiful ships, but they radiated a sense of lethal purpose that made the ambassador's crystal matrix hum with unconscious fear. The Federation Council will demand explanations, Zexthala finally managed to say. This level of militarization violates dozens of galactic treaties. The other species will see this as a threat to the balance of power. Rivera turned back to the viewport, where the last few dreadnoughts were taking their positions in the massive formation. 53 ships in total, each one capable of engaging entire enemy fleets single-handedly. They can demand whatever they like, Ambassador, he said calmly. Right now, the Void Hunters are 3 days from reaching the core systems. 3 days before they begin consuming worlds that house trillions of Federation citizens. The time for treaties and diplomatic protocols has passed. A new voice crackled through the communication system. General Rivera, this is Admiral Hayes, aboard the Prometheus. All dreadnought captains report ready for combat operations. Long-range sensors indicate the Void Hunter swarm has changed course. They're heading directly for this position. Rivera's expression didn't change, but Zexthala caught the slight tightening around his eyes. Estimated time to contact, Admiral? 18 hours at their current velocity. Sir, they're bringing everything. Our sensors detect over 2 million individual hunter units in the swarm. They've stripped matter from entire star systems to build these forces. 2 million. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Even with their massive firepower advantage, 53 ships against 2 million seemed like mathematical impossibility. Zexathala's crystal form began to dim as despair crept through her consciousness. But General Rivera simply nodded as if he had expected this news. Very well, Admiral. Signal the fleet. All ships are to begin final combat preparations. And Hayes, initiate Phase 2. Phase 2, sir? Even through the comm system, the Admiral's surprise was evident. That's correct. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity learned from 2 centuries of warfare. As if summoned by his words, the long-range sensors began detecting new hyperspace signatures, massive ones. Whatever Phase 2 entailed, it was clear that the 53 dreadnoughts were only the beginning of humanity's preparations. The Void Hunters were coming in overwhelming numbers, confident in their ability to devour anything that stood against them. They had faced countless civilizations over the millennia, had consumed the fleets and worlds of species beyond counting, but they had never faced humanity. The day humanity saved. The galaxy 18 hours later, the space around Research Station, Omega had transformed into the largest military gathering in galactic history. The 53 dreadnoughts of the Prometheus fleet hung in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapon systems that could crack moons. But they were no longer alone. Ambassador Zexathala floated in the station's command center, her crystalline form pulsing with patterns of awe and terror as she watched humanity's true preparations unfold. Phase 2 had brought forth something that challenged her understanding of what was possible in the physical universe. The UNS Worldbreaker emerged from hyperspace with the slow majesty of a new planet being born. Where the dreadnoughts were massive, this vessel was incomprehensible. It stretched over 800 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull built from the hollowed-out remains of an asteroid that had been larger than most moons. Weapon arrays covered its surface like the scales of some primordial metal beast, and its engines glowed with the contained fury of a captive star. Impossible, whispered Dr. Kethmore, the Zephyrian science officer who had joined them in the command center. His insectoid features twitched with the neurological overflow that his species experienced when confronted with data that didn't fit their understanding of reality. The energy requirements to move something of that mass. The gravitational effects alone should tear apart anything within 1,000 kilometers. General Rivera stood at the tactical display, his weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of holographic readouts. The Worldbreaker took 15 years to complete, he said calmly. We had to develop new forms of matter compression, gravitational shielding, and energy distribution. 3 entire research colonies devoted themselves to solving the engineering challenges. But even the Worldbreaker wasn't the end of humanity's revelations. Through the viewport, space continued to shimmer and warp as more vessels dropped out of hyperspace. Dozens of ships that defied classification, each one a unique solution to the problem of fighting an enemy that consumed star systems. The UNS Planet Killer was built around a single massive weapon that stretched for 600 kilometers. Its sole purpose was to fire projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, turning kinetic energy into the kind of destructive force usually reserved for stellar collisions. The UNS Void Reaper carried fusion warheads in the megaton range, each missile capable of sterilizing entire continents. The UNS Star's Vengeance was a mobile weapons platform that could deploy automated hunter drones by the millions. How? Zexathala finally managed to ask. How did you hide construction projects of this magnitude? The Federation monitors every major industrial activity in civilized space. Admiral Sarah Hayes materialized as a hologram beside Rivera, her image transmitted from the bridge of the Prometheus. She was younger than the general, but her eyes carried the same unsettling confidence. Ambassador, you're still thinking like a member of the Federation. We didn't hide our activities from your monitoring systems. We simply conducted them in places where your people never thought to look. The holographic display shifted to show a star map that encompassed not just the known galaxy, but the vast empty regions between galactic arms. Red markers indicated construction sites, mining operations, and research facilities scattered across millions of cubic light-years of space that most species considered uninhabitable wasteland. The dead zones. Dr. Kethamor's mandibles clicked in amazement. You built your fleet in the spaces between galaxies. Not between, Rivera corrected. Beyond. In the regions where matter is so sparse that most species can't sustain industrial operations. We developed new technologies for resource extraction, automated construction, and long-distance logistics. It took us 22 years. But we transformed the galactic periphery into the largest weapons manufacturing complex in known space. The tactical display chimed softly, indicating an incoming priority transmission. The image of Captain Torres appeared, broadcasting from humanity's deep space monitoring station. General Rivera, we have visual confirmation of the Void Hunter swarm. They're dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. The main display shifted to show the approaching enemy forces. Zexathala's crystalline matrix blazed with fear patterns as she took in the sight. The Void Hunters moved like a plague of mechanical insects, their dark ships stretching across space in formations that blocked out entire starfields. Each individual hunter was roughly the size of a Federation cruiser, but they moved with the coordination of a hive mind that had been perfecting its tactics for millennia. Count? Rivera asked calmly. 2.7 million individual units, sir. They're advancing in a sphere formation, probably planning to envelope our position and attack from all vectors simultaneously. Dr. Kethamor's insectoid features twitched rapidly as his mind processed the tactical situation. Even with your massive ships, the numerical advantage is overwhelming. Basic mathematics suggests that each of your vessels would need to destroy approximately 40,000 enemy units to achieve victory. Admiral Hayes smiled from her holographic display. Doctor, you're applying conventional tactical thinking to an unconventional problem. Observe. The human fleet began to move with surprising coordination for such massive vessels. The dreadnoughts spread out in a formation that created interlocking fields of fire, while the super-heavy platforms took positions at strategic points throughout the formation. But it was their weapons activation that truly demonstrated the scale of humanity's preparations. The UNS Planet Killer fired first, its massive rail cannon launching a projectile that crossed the intervening space in mere seconds. The kinetic slug, moving at nearly 30% of light speed, struck the center of the Void Hunter formation with the force of a stellar collision. The explosion that followed consumed thousands of enemy ships in an expanding sphere of superheated plasma. Impossible, Zexathala whispered. No weapon can generate that level of destructive force. Kinetic energy scales exponentially with velocity, Rivera explained, his voice carrying the calm satisfaction of a plan coming together. When you accelerate sufficient mass to relativistic speeds, you don't need exotic matter or antimatter. Weapons. Simple physics becomes your ally. The Void Hunters responded with their own devastating firepower, launching clouds of self-replicating attack drones that swarmed toward the human fleet like angry insects. But humanity was ready for this tactic as well. The UNS Void Reaper opened its missile bays and released a cloud of fusion warheads that filled the space between the fleets. Each warhead was programmed with sophisticated AI targeting systems and enough destructive force to vaporize everything within a 100-kilometer radius. The drones, packed together for maximum effectiveness, found themselves flying into a minefield of miniature suns. The beauty of overwhelming force, Admiral Hayes commented as explosions lit up the space between the fleets, is that it eliminates the need for complex tactical planning. When you can destroy millions of enemies simultaneously, strategy becomes remarkably simple. But the Void Hunters had survived for millennia by adapting to unexpected threats. The surviving ships began to scatter, attempting to use their superior numbers and mobility to outflank the human formation. Their hive mind calculated new attack patterns, seeking weaknesses in the human defensive grid. They found none. The UNS Star's Vengeance deployed its drone complement, releasing a swarm of automated hunters that matched the Void Hunters' numbers, ship for ship. But where the alien machines relied on organic technology and living metal, Humanity's drones were pure mechanical precision guided by quantum AI systems. The two swarms met in the space between the main fleets, creating a secondary battle that raged across thousands of cubic kilometers. Meanwhile, the dreadnoughts demonstrated why humanity had built them so large. Their massive rail cannons fired in coordinated volleys, creating intersecting patterns of destruction that herded the Void Hunter formation into killing zones. Their antimatter torpedo systems launched guided weapons that pursued individual targets across vast distances, detonating with enough force to crack small asteroids. Status report, Rivera commanded as the battle reached its crescendo. Void Hunter, forces down to approximately 800,000 units, reported Captain Torres. Our drone swarms are maintaining favorable exchange ratios. All major vessels report minimal damage. The Worldbreaker had remained silent throughout the opening stages of the battle, but now its purpose became clear. The massive vessel began to move forward, its enormous bulk accelerating toward the heart of the remaining Void Hunter formation. As it approached, weapon systems that dwarfed anything on the smaller ships came online. "What is it doing?" Zexathala asked, her crystal form brightening with anticipation. "Something we've never tried before," Rivera admitted. "The Worldbreaker carries an experimental weapon system. We call it the Reality Ripper." The ambassador's matrix flickered with confusion. Reality Ripper? It manipulates local space-time to create artificial gravity wells. Essentially, it turns empty space into a crushing force that compresses matter down to the atomic level. The Worldbreaker's weapon fired, and space itself seemed to scream. A sphere of absolute darkness appeared in the center of the Void Hunter formation, and everything within 1,000 kilometers began to collapse toward it. Enemy ships, twisted into metal ribbons by gravitational forces that belonged around black holes, disappeared into the artificial event horizon. The remaining Void Hunters, their hive mind finally grasping the impossibility of their situation, attempted to retreat. They found their escape routes blocked by human ships that had been waiting in hyperspace, ready to emerge wherever the enemy tried to flee. Complete tactical victory, Admiral Hayes reported 20 minutes later. All Void Hunter units destroyed or disabled. No human casualties. Ammunition expenditure well within acceptable parameters. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. The Void Hunters, the ancient machine race that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia, had been completely eliminated in less than an hour of combat. The threat that had driven entire civilizations to consider evacuation had been ended by humanity's overwhelming display of force. Dr. Kethmore's insectoid features had gone completely still, a sign of deep shock in his species. In all our records, in all our historical databases, no single battle has ever seen the destruction of over 2 million combat vessels. The resource cost alone represents the industrial output of hundreds of worlds. Rivera nodded slowly. The Federation Council spent decades debating the Void Hunter threat, forming committees to study the problem, organizing diplomatic missions to negotiate with an enemy that doesn't communicate. We spent 22 years building the tools necessary to solve the problem permanently. Ambassador Zexathala's crystalline form pulsed with complex patterns that her translator struggled to interpret. "General Rivera, what humanity has accomplished here, it changes everything. The balance of power in the galaxy, the relationship between species, the very nature of interstellar civilization." "Perhaps," Rivera replied. "But that's a problem for tomorrow. Today, the galaxy is safe from the Void Hunters. Tomorrow, we'll begin the work of figuring out what comes next." Through the command center's viewport, the human fleet began to disperse. Some ships moved to secure the battlefield and recover salvageable technology. Others prepared to return to the secret bases where they had been built. Their existence, known now but their full capabilities still shrouded in mystery. The age of human secrecy was over, but the age of human influence had only just begun. As the stars wheeled overhead, unchanged by the battle that had raged among them, Ambassador Zexathala realized that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had not merely won a battle, they had announced their arrival as the galaxy's newest superpower, and they had done it with the kind of overwhelming force that left no room for doubt or negotiation. The Federation Council would have much to discuss in the days ahead.